The blizzard arrived long before the moon rose, sweeping through the northern ridge with a force that felt almost alive. Winds screamed down from the mountain tops like wounded beasts, rattling the pines until they bowed under its power. Snow churned across the forest floor in fixed spirals that swallowed sound and light, turning the world into a vast, shifting white abyss. Even the seasoned hunters of the mountain tribes hid in their dens, understanding that storms of this magnitude were not mere weather. They were warnings. But one wolf was still moving through the storm, small, against the massive frozen wilderness. Arya, the lone Omega, trudged through knee-deep snow with the cautious familiarity of a creature who had learned to survive the world alone. Her cloak, patched and worn from years of harsh winters, clung heavily to her shoulders as the wind whipped its edges like claws, trying to tear it from her back. Frost clung to her dark hair where snowflakes had melted and refrozen, flaming her pale, determined face. She had been walking since dawn, traveling with the quiet desperation of someone searching not for safety, but for shelter. Temporary refuge from a world that never welcomed her. Her breath puffed into the air in soft white clouds, quickly consumed by the roaring blizzard. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of exhaustion, but because of something deeper, something she tried to quiet with every passing hour. The storm felt wrong, not like the usual mountain tempests she'd learned to navigate. This one felt tense, charged, as if holding its breath, as if waiting. Arya tightened her grip on the leather strap of her pack and quickened her pace, following the faint outline of a trail buried beneath fresh snow. She could smell nothing beyond the overwhelming cold, could hear only the shriek of wind. Yet her instincts pricked sharply, warning her that the mountain was not empty tonight. Her heart beat faster. Something was out here. Something big. Something dangerous. And it was close. She paused near a cluster of fallen trees, leaning against the bark to catch her breath. The cold bit her exposed skin like 1,000 needles, and the storm's relentless push made her bones ache. She closed her eyes, letting her other senses reach outward. For a moment, the world... The blizzard arrived long before the moon rose, sweeping through the northern ridge with a force that felt almost alive. Winds screamed down from the mountain tops like wounded beasts, rattling the pines until they bowed under its power. Snow churned across the forest floor in fixed spirals that swallowed sound and light, turning the world into a vast, shifting white abyss. Even the seasoned hunters of the mountain tribes hid in their dens, understanding that storms of this magnitude were not mere weather. They were warnings. But one wolf was still moving through the storm, small, against the massive frozen wilderness. Arya, the lone Omega, trudged through knee-deep snow with the cautious familiarity of a creature who had learned to survive the world alone. Her cloak, patched and worn from years of harsh winters, clung heavily to her shoulders as the wind whipped its edges like claws, trying to tear it from her back. Frost clung to her dark hair where snowflakes had melted and refrozen, flaming her pale, determined face. She had been walking since dawn, traveling with the quiet desperation of someone searching not for safety, but for shelter. Temporary refuge from a world that never welcomed her. Her breath puffed into the air in soft white clouds, quickly consumed by the roaring blizzard. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of exhaustion, but because of something deeper, something she tried to quiet with every passing hour. The storm felt wrong, not like the usual mountain tempests she'd learned to navigate. This one felt tense, charged, as if holding its breath, as if waiting. Arya tightened her grip on the leather strap of her pack and quickened her pace, following the faint outline of a trail buried beneath fresh snow. She could smell nothing beyond the overwhelming cold, could hear only the shriek of wind. Yet her instincts pricked sharply, warning her that the mountain was not empty tonight. Her heart beat faster. Something was out here. Something big. Something dangerous. And it was close. She paused near a cluster of fallen trees, leaning against the bark to catch her breath. The cold bit her exposed skin like 1,000 needles, and the storm's relentless push made her bones ache. She closed her eyes, letting her other senses reach outward. For a moment, the world... Yet something anchored her feet to the ground. "Who are you?" she whispered to herself, though the storm swallowed her voice instantly. Cautiously, she stepped closer. The wolf's breaths came shallowly, each one sounding more like a struggle than a rhythm. His muzzle was coated in frost, the snow beneath him stained with streaks of dark, almost black blood. When she placed a hand near his chest, she felt the heat radiating from his body, unnatural, feverish, burning. Poison. Not the mild kind used by hunters. This was something darker, designed to kill an alpha with brutal efficiency. An attack. A betrayal. Someone wanted this wolf dead, and they nearly succeeded. Arya knelt beside him, brushing snow away from his coat. Her hands trembled as she examined the wounds, 2 deep punctures near the flank, the flesh around them swollen and discolored with toxins. She recognized the scent instantly. Wolfbane mixed with paralytic aconite, a lethal combination. Her stomach twisted. Whoever poisoned him wasn't a rogue hunter. They were professionals, trained killers. Arya's instincts screamed for her to leave him. A poisoned Alpha King was the most dangerous creature of the world once he recovered. And even if he didn't, the ones hunting him were likely close. They wouldn't leave unfinished business behind. She should run. She should disappear into the storm like she always did. But she couldn't move. Something deeper than instinct held her there. Something that felt almost like a pull in her chest. Subtle yet undeniable. A whisper she didn't understand. Her gaze drifted to the wolf's face. Even unconscious, his expression was fierce, as if he were fighting the poison with sheer will. His fur, though matted with blood, was thick and majestic. His muscles still twitched with strength. And beneath the harsh scent of poison, she detected a faint, unmistakable aroma. Royal blood. Arya's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just any alpha. This was Cairo Blackthorn, the infamous Alpha King of the North, the most feared and respected leader in the entire Dominion. Arya had heard countless stories about him. Born during a rare blood moon, blessed with unmatched strength, ruthless in battle, and unyielding in his pursuit of justice. Some said he could sense lies with a single glance. Others said he had never been defeated, not once in his entire reign. But those stories never described him like this. Weak, bleeding, poisoned, dying. Arya swallowed hard. If she left him, he would not survive another hour. The poison was too strong, the storm too cruel. But if she stayed, she would risk everything. Her life, her anonymity, her fragile freedom. A lone Omega, carrying an Alpha King through a blizzard? It sounded like a death wish. Yet when she placed a trembling hand against his fur, she felt his heartbeat, faint but fighting. Something inside her snapped into place, like a long-ignored instinct awakening after years of silence. She couldn't leave him, even if it destroyed her. Her breaths came faster as she made her decision. She rose slowly, bracing herself against the storm, and maneuvered her body beneath his. Muscles screamed in protest. Her knees nearly buckled. The weight was overwhelming. He was at least 3 times her size in wolf form. But she dug her heels into the snow, using every ounce of strength she possessed, and lifted, or tried to. The first attempt failed. She fell to her knees, gasping for air. The second attempt nearly dislocated her shoulder, but on the third attempt, driven by sheer determination, she managed to pull his massive torso across her shoulders, staggering under his weight. Her legs shook violently. Her back felt like it was being crushed. The cold bit deeper, and the storm howled in triumph, as if mocking her. But she didn't stop. Her breaths came ragged, her vision blurred, but she took one step, then another and another. She pushed forward through the storm, every inch of her body screaming, but her heart strangely calm. She didn't know if she could carry him for a mile, let alone 6. She didn't know if the storm would kill her. She didn't know if the hunters were still out there. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. If she didn't try, he would die. And for reasons she couldn't explain, that was unacceptable. Every step became a battle. The storm seemed to grow angrier that she dared defy it. Snow piled against her legs, forcing her to drag herself forward inch by agonizing inch. The wind tore at her cloak, threatening to rip it away entirely. Ice formed in her eyelashes, blinding her. Yet she kept on moving. Hours blurred together. Time lost its meaning. Her world reduced to nothing but the cold, the weight on her shoulders, and the faint heartbeat against her back. Something moved in the distance. Faint shadows cutting through the white chaos. Arya's breath stopped. They were not part of the storm. They were wolves, tracking them. Hunters. And they were closing in. The panic that surged through her veins was unlike anything she had felt in years. She couldn't run, she couldn't fight. She could barely stand. But survival wasn't optional. Arya dragged herself off the trail, moving toward an outcropping of rocks partially shielded from the storm. Snow buried the entrance, forming a natural curtain. She pushed through it, collapsing to her knees as she lowered Cairo inside. She used what little strength she had left to cover him with branches, snow, and fallen pine needles, anything to mask his scent. Then she pressed her body over his, using herself as a shield, forcing her breathing to slow. Her heart hammered in her chest, but she willed it to quiet. Footsteps crunched through the snow outside. 3, maybe 4, heavy, calculated, organized. These were not ordinary rogues. Their shadows passed dangerously close to where she hid. One of them sniffed the air, grunting in frustration. Another growled something she couldn't hear through the storm. She felt the vibration of their steps through the ground as they circled, searching for the dying Alpha King. Minutes stretched like an eternity before the hunters finally moved on, swallowed by the storm once again. Arya waited long after they were gone, before allowing herself to breathe freely. Her body trembled from fear and exhaustion. Her muscles burned, her lungs ached. But she was alive. He was alive, and that was all that mattered. For now. When she finally pushed herself up and peered at the Alpha King's face, she realized something that made her heart stop. His golden eyes were half open, and he had seen everything. Seen her carry him, seen her protect him, seen her risk her life for him. Arya's breath caught. The Alpha King's gaze burned through the storm's fading light, fierce yet confused, as if trying to understand why a lone Omega would save him when no one else dared. But before she could decipher the meaning of his look, his eyes closed again. This time, not from poison or weakness, but from trust. Trust in her. The realization struck her harder than the blizzard's cold. Arya pulled her cloak tighter around him and herself, leaning back against the stone wall of the hidden hollow. She wasn't safe. He wasn't safe. And the storm was far from over. But something had begun tonight. Something dangerous. Something powerful. The storm did not ease with dawn. Instead, it grew more violent, swirling around the mountain with a fury that seemed almost deliberate. Snow piled in thick, uneven drifts, reshaping the familiar landscape into a treacherous labyrinth of white hills and icy edges. The wind roared like a wounded beast, echoing through the ravines and shaking the earth beneath Arya's feet as she moved. She had waited until the shadows of the hunters faded completely before attempting to move again. Her muscles protested every shift of her body. Her arms, shoulders, and back throbbed with burning pain from carrying the Alpha King through the night. Her legs felt like hollow sticks, barely capable of holding her weight. But she did not hesitate. There was no other choice. The hidden hollow where she had shielded him would not protect them for long. The hunters had lost their trail once, but they would return. Hunters like these never abandoned a kill, especially when the kill was the most powerful ruler in the north. Arya crouched aside Kyra's massive wolf form, brushing snow from his coat. His breathing was shallow but steady. The fever still raged beneath his fur. The poison wasn't merely killing him, it was tearing through him, burning along his veins, weakening his strength with every passing minute. There wasn't much time left. She pressed her trembling hand to his flank, feeling the rapid pulse vibrating beneath her palms. Her breath misted in the air, uneven and shaky, and she forced the rising panic back down into her chest. Wolves like him didn't die. They weren't supposed to. His aura, even now, still radiated power. Yet here he was, helpless, vulnerable, dependent on her, a lone Omega. Arya swallowed hard. There was one chance, one place she remembered from her years wandering the mountains. A cabin, old, hidden, forgotten. She had stumbled across it once during a storm similar to this one, and inside she had found remnants of herbs, roots, and tools, long abandoned by the healer who once lived there. It was a place of lost wolves, and it was their only hope. Arya adjusted her cloak and tightened her grip beneath Cairo's shoulders. The pain in her body flared violently as she once again attempted to lift him, but she could not stop. She leaned in close, braced her legs in the snow, and heaved. Her knees buckled. Her breath left her in a choked gasp. Her vision blurred. But she pushed harder. With a strained cry, swallowed by the storm, she lifted him onto her back. The weight crashed down on her like a boulder. Her bones trembled. Her fingers went numb. Her heart hammered against her ribs. But she did not fall. Slowly, painfully, she rose to her feet. The storm slammed against her, nearly throwing her off balance. But she dug her heels into the snow and forced herself forward. One step, then another. Every movement sent trembling shocks through her limbs, like fire and ice colliding beneath her skin. The path to the cabin was rough, winding along a narrow mountain edge where a single misstep could send her plummeting into the gorge below. But Arya had traveled these mountains for years. She knew the hidden ways, the secret trails, the safer routes carved between jagged rocks. Still, carrying the Alpha King made every inch of the journey treacherous. Her boots slipped more than once, her breath catching each time she teetered near the cliff's edge. Snowflakes swirled around her in violent patterns that obscured the world ahead. It felt like walking through a dream, one stitched together with fear, determination, and pure survival. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like days. The storm showed no mercy. Even the air felt heavy, thick with cold that seeped into her lungs and froze the breaths inside her. Her blood felt sluggish. Her fingers stiffened. The weight of the unconscious Alpha pressed down relentlessly. Just when she feared she might collapse for the final time, her foot struck something solid beneath the snow. A wooden step. Her heart jolted. She brushed away the snow with her boot, uncovering the familiar outline of the old cabin's door. Relief, sharp and overwhelming, washed through her chest. She shifted Cairo's body carefully, leaned against the frozen door, and pushed. It did not move. The blizzard had sealed it shut with ice. Arya braced herself and pushed again, harder. Pain shot through her muscles, but she couldn't stop. She rammed her shoulder against the door with a desperate grunt. The wood groaned in protest, cracking under the pressure. One more push, then another. Finally, the ice broke. The door swung inward, banging against the wall. Warm darkness greeted her. Not warm in temperature. No, the cabin was nearly as cold as the outside. But warm in memory. Warm in familiarity. Warm in hope. Arya staggered inside, falling to her knees beneath the Alpha King's weight. She lowered him gently onto the wooden floor, then collapsed beside him, chest heaving. The smell of old herbs, dried wood, and forgotten memories lingered in the air. The cabin was exactly as she remembered. Shelves lined with jars of herbs and roots, a stone hearth filled with ash, a wooden table scarred with knife marks, and a small sleeping corner in the back. Arya forced herself to her feet. She reached for the flint and steel hung near the hearth and began the long process of coaxing fire into life. Her hands shook violently, not just from cold, but from exhaustion. But she refused to stop. Sparks flew, twigs caught, flames flickered. Then finally, a warm fire roared to life, pushing back the chill that had seeped into her bones. Arya dragged blankets, old pelts, and anything she could find to create a warm bedding for Cairo. She worked tirelessly, removing snow, drying his fur with her cloak, checking the swelling around his wounds, and examining the poisoned veins. Her breath caught. The poison had spread. It had reached his chest. If it reached his heart, he would not last the day. Arya's chest tightened painfully as she searched the shelves for the one thing that might give him a fighting chance: mountain root, a rare herb that slowed poison. Bitterness filled her mouth as she scanned the drawers. Gone. All gone. Her heart sank, but then she remembered something. The healer who once lived here had been meticulous. She would never store all her supply in one place. Arya dropped to her knees, ran her fingers along the floorboards, searching for loose wood, until her hand caught on a panel that shifted beneath her weight. A hidden compartment. She pried it open. Inside lay a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Her breath trembled with relief as she opened it. Mountain root. Dark, bitter, and potent. Exactly what she needed. Arya worked quickly. She boiled snow in a cracked pot, crushed the root, and mixed it until the liquid turned milky brown. Then she knelt beside Cairo, gently lifting his head. His eyes remained closed, but his breaths were shallow, labored, each one sounding like it cost him tremendous effort. Arya pressed the rim of the bowl to his lips, whispering nothing, because narration alone filled the moment. Her hand steadied his jaw, forcing the bitter liquid into his mouth. Some trickled down his muzzle, staining his fur, but he swallowed enough. His breathing changed. Not stronger, not yet, but slower, more controlled. Arya sat back, her body finally giving in to the exhaustion she had been holding at bay. She leaned against the wall beside him, letting the fire's warmth seep into her freezing limbs. The storm outside continued to rage, rattling the windows and door as if trying to break inside. But the cabin held firm. For now. She watched the Alpha King in the flickering firelight. Even weakened, his presence filled the small cabin. His fur glowed like polished obsidian. His muscles twitched with the remnants of battle strength. His aura, though faint, still pulsed with dominance. Who would dare poison him? Who would risk the wrath of the North to bring down its king? And why? The questions twisted inside her like sharp thorns. But no answers came, only silence. Silence and the rhythmic crackling of flames. Arya racked herself in a blanket, exhaustion dragging at her eyelids. She had not slept since the previous day. Her body begged for rest, but she couldn't fully close her eyes, not yet, because she heard something else. Something faint, something distant. Footsteps. Not outside, not near the cabin, but in the memory of the mountains she had walked. Those hunters, they had not gone far. They were circling, waiting for the storm to weaken, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. Arya leaned her head back, staring at the roof beams above her. She knew the danger wasn't over. She knew dawn would bring new threats. She knew that keeping the Alpha King alive was only the beginning. The hunters would return. The poison would fight back. And she, a lone Omega, had stepped into a war that was never meant for someone like her. A war as alphas. A war of betrayal. A war that would devour the unprepared. Yet here she was, guarding the most powerful wolf in the North, keeping him alive. And without fully understanding why, she felt that protecting him was the first thing in years that truly mattered. Not for reward, not for power, not for recognition, but because something deep in her soul whispered that their fates had crossed for a reason. The blizzard did not let up even for a heartbeat. Snow hurled itself across the landscape like a furious beast, clawing at Lunai's cloak, dragging at her arms, as if demanding she surrender the dying wolf she carried. But she tightened her hold around the poisoned male's limp body, refusing to let the cold steal what little life flickered inside him. Her breath came in ragged bursts, white clouds instantly snatched away by the screaming wind. Every step felt heavier, as though the earth beneath the snow had grown resentful, trying to pull her into its frozen jaws. But still she forced her legs forward, guided by instinct, desperation, and a strange echoing pull deep in her bones that made no sense to her yet. After nearly an hour of trudging through the storm, her knees buckled. She dropped to one knee, the weight suddenly too much, and the wolf's head slipped from her arm. His muzzle landed softly in the snow. "No, no, no, no," she whispered, forcing herself upright again. He slid her arms beneath him and lifted with a trembling strength she didn't know she still had. But the world blurred. Her vision pulsed, a sharp ringing filled her ears. The poison clinging to his scent, something dark, acrid, unnatural, was affecting her, even though she wasn't the one struck by it. She inhaled deeply, trying to steady herself. "Just a little farther," she muttered. "I can't lose you too." As she pressed forward again, something shifted in the storm around her. The whirling air stilled just for a breath, like a held exhale. Then came a sound she hadn't heard before. A whisper. Not from the wind, not from the forest. From beneath the ice. A shiver crawled up her spine. She turned her head, eyes scanning the snow-covered world. Everything was white and moving, yet somehow still. She took one more step. Crack. Not for reward. Not for power. Not for recognition. But because something deep in her soul whispered that their fates had crossed for a reason. The blizzard did not let up even for a heartbeat. Snow hurled itself across the landscape like a furious beast, clawing at Lunai's cloak, dragging at her arms, as if demanding she surrender the dying wolf she carried. But she tightened her hold around the poisoned male's limp body, refusing to let the cold steal what little life flickered inside him. Her breath came in ragged bursts, white clouds instantly snatched away by the screaming wind. Every step felt heavier, as though the earth beneath the snow had grown resentful, trying to pull her into its frozen jaws. But still she forced her legs forward, guided by instinct, desperation, and a strange echoing pull deep in her bones that made no sense to her yet. After nearly an hour of trudging through the storm, her knees buckled. She dropped to one knee, the weight suddenly too much, and the wolf's head slipped from her arm. His muzzle landed softly in the snow. "No, no, no, no," she whispered, forcing herself upright again. He slid her arms beneath him and lifted with a trembling strength she didn't know she still had. But the world blurred. Her vision pulsed, a sharp ringing filled her ears. The poison clinging to his scent, something dark, acrid, unnatural, was affecting her, even though she wasn't the one struck by it. She inhaled deeply, trying to steady herself. "Just a little farther," she muttered. "I can't lose you too." As she pressed forward again, something shifted in the storm around her. The whirling air stilled just for a breath, like a held exhale. Then came a sound she hadn't heard before. A whisper. Not from the wind, not from the forest. From beneath the ice. A shiver crawled up her spine. She turned her head, eyes scanning the snow-covered world. Everything was white and moving, yet somehow still. She took one more step. Crack. The Alsa King. His eyes glowed through the blizzard, bright as molten gold. He knelt, extended an arm over the edge, and growled, "Give him to me." Lunai shook her head stubbornly. "If I let go, he'll sink." "And if you don't," he said, voice deep and impossibly calm, "you will." She hesitated, chest burning, limbs numb, but she saw the truth in his gaze. With a trembling breath, she lifted the poisoned wolf toward him. The Alpha King reached down, grabbed the wolf by the scruff with one powerful arm, and hauled him out of the icy water as if he weighed nothing at all. Then he reached for her. Your turn, he said. But Lunai's strength finally gave out. She tried to lift her hand, but her fingers wouldn't move. Her body sank. Water filled her ears, muffling the world. Just before she went under, the Alpha King's snarl ripped through the storm, feral, furious. I said, your turn. His hand plunged into the water, closing around her wrist. With a violent pull, he dragged her from the freezing depths and threw her onto the snow, his body shielding her from the wind. She coughed violently, water pouring from her mouth, her body shivering uncontrollably. The Alpha King hovered over her, breath harsh, golden eyes burning with something she couldn't name. You should be dead, he growled quietly. Lunai forced her eyes open. I had to save him. The Alpha King looked down at the poisoned wolf lying beside her, and his expression changed. Shock and fury and something darker and more dangerous. Do you even know, he whispered, voice trembling with barely controlled rage, who you just carried through a blizzard? Lunai blinked, confused, exhausted, barely conscious. He was dying, she said softly. That's all I knew. The Alpha Thing leaned closer, his jaw clenching. That wolf is my brother. The storm roared around them, but Lunai felt nothing but the sudden silence between her heartbeat and the Alpha King's piercing stare. And because you saved him, he continued, voice low and almost disbelieving, you have bound yourself to the throne far more tightly than you realize. Lunai's breath hitched. I didn't mean... He cut her off with a single rumbling sentence. You belong to me now. The world blurred. Darkness crept in. Lunai's eyes fluttered as consciousness split away. The last thing she felt was the heat of the Alpha King's arms lifting her from the snow. Warmth. That was the first thing Lunai felt, alien, unfamiliar, impossible warmth after the brutal cold that had nearly stolen her life. She drifted somewhere between sleep and consciousness, hearing indistinct voices echoing through a fog. She didn't recognize the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Fear, urgency, authority so heavy it pressed against her skin. Someone growled, low, sharp, dangerous enough to silence the room. Then warmth enveloped her again, stronger this time, as though someone wrapped her in a thick blanket of heat and safety. Only one wolf carried heat like that. Only one wolf radiated power through the air like a living storm, the Alpha King. Lunai's lashes fluttered, and she winced at the glow of torches lining a stone ceiling. Her vision swam, shapes blurring in and out, her head throbbing from the cold's cruelty. She tried to sit up, a firm hand pushed gently, yet undeniably, against her shoulder. Easy, came that deep, commanding voice. You nearly drowned. Your body is still fighting the cold. Her gaze sharpened, and there he was. The Alpha King sat beside her on the edge of a massive fur-covered bed, his posture rigid, his jaw tight, golden eyes fixed on her with a mixture of relief and unspoken fury. He wasn't wearing his winter armor now. Only a soft black shirt that clung to his broad shoulders, still dusted with melting snow, and dark trousers tucked into boots. His hair was tousled, damp from melted frost, making him look even more dangerous, even more unreal. Lunai's throat tightened. She looked around in confusion. Where am I? In my stronghold, he answered. The Ice Citadel. Her eyes widened. Everyone in the kingdom knew of it. The fortress carved into the mountain's heart. Impenetrable, sacred, ruled by the Alpha King and his bloodline. She shouldn't be here. A lone Omega had no place this close to the throne. She tried to sit up again, ignoring the ache in her limbs. Your brother, where? He lives. The Alpha King's voice softened, just slightly. Because of you. Some of the tightness in her chest released. She let out a shaky breath. I'm glad, truly. He stood abruptly, pacing once, twice, his boots echoing against the stone floor. The torches flickered, shadows dancing over the walls carved with ancient runes. Then he turned back to her. His stare pinned her in place. You don't understand what you did. Lunai blinked. You carried the royal air through a blizzard, he said, voice low and razor sharp. A poisoned wolf, an alpha-blooded wolf. His steps were slow as he approached again. You protected him, sheltered him, risked your life for him. Lunai swallowed, That's what anyone would do. No, he growled. Not anyone. Only someone who accepts death willingly. Only someone who carries courage or a bond. Her breath caught. A bond? I don't understand. He sat again, leaning closer, too close. His scent, warm, smoke-touched cedar, wrapped around her, stirring something deep inside she had no name for. You smell like him, the Alpha King whispered. Like the poison. Like ice. Like... His voice faltered. Like destiny. Lune's pulse raced. She forced herself to look into his eyes. Why are you saying these things? Why do you talk as if I'm... Because you bear the mark, he said. Her heart stopped. What mark? He reached forward slowly, giving her time to cool away. But she didn't. Something about his touch felt inevitable. His fingertips brushed the side of her neck. Heat rushed through her instantly, her breath hitching. He tilted her chin gently, exposing the smallest patch of skin beneath her ear. There, faint but shimmering in the torchlight, was a glowing sigil, woven into her skin, a delicate swirl of gold, shaped like intertwined crescents. Lune gasped. What is that? The royal insignia, he said. It only appears when the throne has chosen a bond. Her entire body went cold, colder than the icy river. No, she whispered. No, that's impossible. The Alpha King's gaze darkened, his voice dropping dangerously. You saved my brother. You carried him through 6 miles of deadly storm. The ice broke beneath you, yet you held on. You survived a poison that should have killed you instantly. His breath brushed her cheek as he leaned even closer. Don't you dare tell me that's impossible. Lune shook her head, her breath trembling. I didn't ask for this. I didn't even know who he was. And yet fate knows you, he murmured. Silence thickened between them. Then the door burst open with a loud clang. Both turned sharply. A healer rushed in, eyes wide, panting from running. Your Majesty, she cried, bowing quickly. The prince, he's awake. The Alpha King stiffened. Something fierce and protective flared in his eyes. He stood instantly. But just as he reached the door, he hesitated, turned back, looked at Lune. The council is already asking questions, he said. They know Lome Omega is in my private chambers. Her stomach twisted. When they learn what mark you bear, he continued quietly, they will not be pleased. Fear rippled through her. What will they do? Depends, he answered. Some will demand your exile, others your execution. Her blood ran cold. But no one, he said, stepping toward her again, fire blazing in his eyes, will touch you. No one will even speak of harming you. He leaned down, his presence overwhelming. Because I claimed you the moment I pulled you from that water. Lunie's breath stopped. The Alpha King's voice dropped to a whisper. And I do not lose what I claim. He turned sharply and left the room, the door slamming behind him with finality. Lunie stared at the glowing mark on her skin. The moment the Alpha King disappeared through the heavy doors, Lunie felt the room tighten around her. The torches dimmed as if reacting to his absence. The thick furs beneath her felt too soft, too foreign, too royal. She didn't belong here. Not in the ice citadel, not under the protection of a king, and certainly not marked with a symbol she didn't understand. She pressed her fingers against the glowing sigil beneath her ear. It pulsed softly, as though sensing she was touching it, as though it was alive. No, she whispered, this has to be a mistake. But the mark continued its faint shimmering, ignoring her fear. Before she could gather her thoughts, a soft sound, like a whisper of cloth over stone, echoed from a far corner of the chamber. Lunie froze. The room wasn't empty. A figure stood, half hidden in the shadows, cloaked in deep gray, blending almost seamlessly with the stone walls. Only a pair of sharp, silver eyes glimmered beneath the hood. Lunie's breath hitched. Who's there? The figure stepped forward silently, too silently. No footsteps, no sound at all. That alone told her one thing. This was no ordinary wolf. The stranger paused several paces away, hands raised slightly to show they were empty. I mean no harm, the figure said, voice low and even. If I wanted to kill you, Omega, you would not have woken. Lunier's stomach nodded. His silver eyes softened slightly. But understand this. Your honesty won't save you. His protection will. As if on cue, the doors thundered open. Kaelen rose instantly, stepping back into the shadows, vanishing almost completely. The Alpha King strode into the room like a storm contained in human form. His jaw was tight, eyes fierce, expression unreadable. Lunai's heart leapt. Fear, confusion, something else she refused to name. He scanned her quickly, checking, assessing, making sure she was still breathing, still conscious. Then his gaze flicked to the shadows where Kaelen stood hidden. You spoke to her, the king said flatly. Kaelen stepped out with a respectful bow. She needed to understand the danger. The king's golden eyes narrowed. I decide what she needs. Kaelen bowed again, but his smirk was barely concealed. Of course, Your Majesty. The Alpha King dismissed him with a single glance. When Kaelen slipped out, the door shut behind him with a heavy thud. Silence settled in the chamber. The king crossed the room, stopping only when he stood directly in front of Lunai. His presence filled the space, large, commanding, impossible to ignore. His voice was deep, quiet, and colder than the storm outside. The council is preparing for the trial. Lunai felt her heart drop. Trial? What does that mean? It means you will face them, the king said. Tonight. Her breath caught, but I don't even understand what's happening. He stepped closer, his face inches from hers. You don't need to understand, he murmured. You just need to trust me. She shivered as he lifted a hand, not touching her, but close enough that she felt the heat radiating from him. You saved my brother. Fate marked you. The council sees you as a threat, Lunai whispered. And you? His eyes softened. Only for a heartbeat. I see you, he said. Her pulse stumbled. Then he straightened, regaining that chilling authority. You will not speak unless I tell you to. You will not stand unless I command it. And when I say you belong to me, his gaze darkened. You will not deny it. Lunai's breath trembled. And if I do, his lips curved, not into a smile, but into something dangerously close to it. Then I will make the council believe you're mine anyway. The room spun. The king extended his hand. Come. Lunai stared at his outstretched palm, large, steady, powerful enough to shatter stone, yet gentle enough to lift her from death. Her fingers trembled. Her fate had already begun shifting the moment he pulled her from the ice. Slowly, fearfully, she placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and sure. Good, he murmured. Now we face them. As the king led her out of the chamber and into the long, torchlit hallway that led toward the council chamber, Lunai felt every instinct inside her scream with warning. Beyond those doors awaited enemies she had never met. That's not comforting. A faint chuckle escaped the hooded figure. It wasn't meant to be. She swallowed hard. What do you want? Information, the figure answered simply. The council moves quickly, too quickly. They smell power. They smell danger. He tilted his head slightly. And they smell you. A cold dread crawled across Lunai's spine. I didn't choose this. I don't even know what any of this means. Then listen carefully, he said, stepping closer. His cloak parted slightly, revealing a slender blade strapped across his chest, silver engraved with runes, humming faintly with magic. Lunai instinctively shifted backward on the bed. He noticed her fear and lowered his hood. Her breath caught. He was young, no more than a few years older than she. His features sharp, striking, and oddly familiar. Silver hair fell loosely around his face, catching the light. But it was his eyes that held her attention. Silver, clear, dangerously intelligent. A rare mark of the Shadowborn wolf. My name is Kaelen, he said quietly. I serve the royal line. You're one of the king's guards? He smirked faintly. Guard, spy, assassin, titles mean little. I serve where I am ordered. Then his expression hardened. And today I was ordered to watch you. Lunai's breath stopped. Watch me? She whispered. Why? Because you carry a mark that hasn't appeared in generations. Because fate just tied you to the most powerful man in the kingdom. His eyes sharpened. And because many will want that bond broken. Her heart hammered. Broken? How? Kaelen didn't answer immediately. His silence was answer enough. Lunai's voice trembled. Are you here to kill me? Kaelen blinked in genuine surprise. If I were here for that, he said calmly, you would not have heard me at all. He folded his arms. Believe it or not, Omega, I am here to help you survive. Looney stared at him stunned. Why? A shadow crossed his expression. Because the king trusts me, and the mark on your neck means he will kill anyone who threatens you. He paused, then added with unsettling honesty, including his own council. A shudder rippled through her. She had seen the Alpha King's fury in the storm. She had felt his power in the way the wind bent around him. The council challenging him was terrifying enough. But threatening his claimed one? She didn't want to imagine the consequences. Kaelen lowered himself onto a carved stone chair near the bed. You must prepare, he said. When the king returns from the prince's chamber, he will announce your presence, and the council will demand to question you. Lune's breath hitched. Question me? About what? Everything, Kaelen replied. Your past, your bloodline, your intentions. They will search the lies, even where are none. She felt the faintest quiver in her voice. I have nothing to hide. Good. Kaelen leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. Then you will survive. Several council members murmured in surprise. Another counselor, a severe woman with braids and icy blue eyes, leaned forward. Forgive my bluntness, your majesty, but we have not seen a bond mark in centuries. For it to appear on an Omega, Lunai flinched, is unprecedented and concerning. The Alpha King stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of Lunai, a silent shield between her and the council. You question the throne's choice? No, Councillor Elara replied smoothly. We question the circumstances. She pointed to Lunai with a graceful, cold gesture. Tell us, girl, how did you acquire that mark? Lunai felt dozens of eyes pierce her again. Her throat tightened. Her palms grew damp. I don't know, she whispered. I didn't even know it existed until the king showed me. Convenient, Mael muttered. She saved my brother's life, the king snapped. She carried him 6 miles through a blizzard alone. She nearly died doing so. The councillor shifted, exchanging unreadable looks. Is that true? Councillor Elara asked Lunai directly. Lunai nodded slowly. Yes, I found him poisoned in the snow. I couldn't just leave him. Anyone would have done the same. A few councillors scoffed quietly. No Omega could endure that storm, one muttered. She's lying, another whispered. She must be working with the attackers. Lunai took a step back, shock and fear building in her chest. I'm not lying. I didn't harm him. I saved him. The murmurs grew louder. She's a threat. She carries the mark. She could take influence over the throne. What if the poison was hers? At that, Lunai's eyes widened in horror. I would never. Enough. The single word booms through the chamber like thunder. The king's voice reverberated off the stone walls, dripping with alpha power. Silence fell instantly. The king's jaw clenched as he surveyed the council with the warning of a predator ready to strike. You accuse the woman who saved my brother's life, he said slowly, while the real poisoner walks free. His eyes glowed brighter. You insult the throne's mark. He stepped fully in front of Lunai now, shielding her completely. And you forget something crucial. No bond mark appears without my bloodline's acceptance. The throne does not bind itself to deception. A few councillors paled. Mael lifted his chin stubbornly. Then let it be tested. Tested? Yes, Mael said. By the ancient rite, the mark must be proven genuine. Lunai's pulse pounded painfully. Ancient rite? Councillor Elara nodded. If your mark is true, the throne's magic will protect you. If it is false, it will destroy you. Lunai's blood turned to ice. Destroy me? Before she could step back, the king turned sharply, grabbing her shoulders. No. His voice cracked like stone splitting under pressure. She will not be subjected to that ritual. It is law, Mael countered. If she carries a true mark, she has nothing to fear. The king's growl rumbled through the room. You know what those rituals do, even to true bearers. Mael spread his hands. Then let her abstain and face exile. Or execution, someone murmured. Lunai's legs weakened. She felt her world tilting, collapsing, closing in. But then, a warm hand grabbed hers, the king's. His eyes locked with hers, fierce, burning, defiant. You are not dying, he said quietly enough for only her to hear. Not today, not ever. Do you understand? Her voice trembled. But the ritual... He moved even closer, his forehead merely touching hers. I will not let them harm you. The councillors watched in tense silence. Finally, the king turned to the table. If the ritual must be done, then I will stand with her. Gasps ripple around the chamber. That is not allowed, Male hissed. If is now. You break centuries of law. I am the law, the king roared. The torches flared, flames erupting higher. The stone beneath their feet trembled. The council fell silent. The king looked down at Lunai, his voice now softer. You will not face this alone. His hand found her cheek, brushing away a tear she didn't realize she'd shed. I will stand with you, and no magic, no ritual, no ancient relic will take you from me. Her heart pounded wildly. But what if the mark fails? It won't, he said with terrifying certainty. Because fate does not make mistakes. He stepped forward, lifting her tin. And neither do I. The council chamber buzzed with fear, with disbelief, with a storm about to break. The king squeezed her hand. The ritual begins at moonrise, he said. Prepare yourself. The night dragged itself over the frozen valley like a shroud woven from ancient shadows. The storm had passed, but its memory lingered, etched into every trembling leaf, every fractured icicle, every silent breath of wind that dared move across the desolate wilderness. Lunai felt the weight of that silence pressing down on her from all sides, a heavy cloak of dread that warned her that danger had not vanished. It had merely shifted shape. The Alpha King's camp still lay hidden deep within the snowberry forest. Faint glimmers of dying emberlight flickered through the gaps in the tents, giving the illusion of watchful eyes. Lunai moved through those dim patches of orange glow with the same stealth she had practiced since childhood. Light-footed, silent, sharply aware. But something inside the air had changed. The pack wolves slept too deeply. The guards' scent trails were erratic, laced with unease. Even the trees stood unnaturally still, like listeners holding their breath for a secret they were not meant to hear. She felt it before she understood it. An ache beneath her ribs, a sharp pulse in the veins of her throat, a pull toward the northern ridge, as if the storm had peeled back the world and exposed the raw thread connecting her to the Alpha King, a thread that vibrated now with urgency. She followed that pull into the darkness. Snow crunched under her boots in soft, hesitant rhythms. The moon had not risen. The forest was swallowed in starless black. But Lunai moved as if she could see more clearly without light, guided by instinct, by the lingering heat of a presence that was neither fully physical nor entirely spiritual. Then she halted. The earth itself seemed to hum beneath her feet. The ridge ahead was wrong, too quiet, too empty. The scent of the Alpha King was faint, nearly erased. Something had happened here, something meant to conceal, not reveal. Lunai crouched and pressed her palm to the snow. It was colder than it should have been, as if the ice had been disturbed and refrozen in unnatural patterns. Her breath fogged the air in a slow, trembling sigh as her heartbeat quickened. She followed the faintest trail, the one scent the storm had not quite managed to smother. It led to a crevice, narrow and sharp-edged, carved into the side of the ridge like a wound in the mountain. There were no footprints leading in, no sign of struggle. Yet the scent of the Alpha King clung to the stone walls like a fading whisper. The truth struck her with a cold, merciless clarity. He had not walked into the crevice. He had been dragged. The knowledge rippled through her like a gust of wind, strong enough to extinguish every last ember of calm. The Alpha King, fierce, unyielding, nearly impossible to overpower, had been taken by something strong enough to mask its tracks, silent enough to vanish without disturbing a single branch, cunning enough to strike while the pack slept. Lunai pressed forward into the darkness. The tight, jagged passage swallowed her whole. Ice-lined stone brushed against her shoulders, and the deeper she ventured, the more the temperature dropped. Her breath crystallized in the air. Her heartbeat echoed between the walls. Beneath the frost, the rock seemed to pulse with a faint energy, old, dangerous, as if the mountain itself had witnessed centuries of secrets and now guarded yet another. Finally, the passage widened. A cavern opened before her, vast, hollow, lit only by the faint shimmer of luminous fungus along the ceiling. The air was thick with an ancient scent, a mixture of damp earth, forgotten rituals, and the metallic tinge of power that did not belong to wolves. Lunai scanned the shadows, and then she saw it. A symbol burned into the far wall, glowing faintly, pulsing in slow breaths like a living creature. It was a sigil she had seen only once before, in a forbidden scroll buried in her childhood pack's archives. A mark imbued with forbidden magic. A mark claimed by those who hunted kings. The mark of the Hollow Wolves, an extinct clan, or so she had believed. A clan exiled centuries ago for practicing blood-binding sorcery strong enough to corrupt entire packs. A clan rumored to have died out, destroyed by their own rituals. But the truth stared at her now in throbbing spectral light. They were alive, and they had taken the Alpha King. The cavern trembled with a distant rumble, a movement deep within the earth that made the ground quiver beneath her boots. Lunai stiffened. The air shifted. Something was waking, something that sensed her presence. The fungus dimmed, as if recoiling. The sigil pulsed faster, brighter, like an alarm beating through the walls. She backed toward the shadows, instinct screaming that she was being watched. A soft breath of cold air swept across her neck from behind. Not wind, not the mountain. Something alive, watching, waiting. The darkness behind her thickened, as though gathering mass, shape, and tension. Lunai did not turn. Turning would be a mistake. Predators lunged at movement. Shadows pounced on the fearful. She steadied her breathing, letting it drop into the deep, slow rhythm of wolves in hunt mode. Still, the presence behind her grew heavier. Closer. She stepped forward, quiet, deliberate, toward the glowing symbol on the wall. The cavern floor vibrated beneath her soles, as if urging her to run, but she did not. Running meant losing the faint trail of the Alpha King's scent that still clung to the sigil. She lifted her hand. The moment her fingers brushed the symbol, a cold shock erupted through her body. Images flashed behind her eyes, broken visions, fragmented memories etched in colors she could not name. She saw claws dragging the Alpha King's body through the snow. She saw a circle carved into stone, dripping with energy too dark to be natural. She felt a chant vibrating through the ground, a summoning older than the packs themselves. She saw eyes, pale, unnatural, burning with hunger. Her own breath caught, frozen mid-inhale. And then she saw him, the Alpha King, bound, weak, barely conscious. A wave of rage surged through her, pure, fierce, unrestrained, a fury so primal it tore through every instinct she possessed. But before she could pull herself back into the present, another vision slammed into her. One she did not understand. Her, standing in the center of a ritual circle, power radiating from her like fire, a force she didn't know she possessed. The cavern snapped back into focus, the presence behind her surged forward. And Lunai ran, not out of fear, but because she now knew the truth. The air outside the cavern struck Lunai like a blade of winter, forged in the heart of a glacier. Snow spiraled in thin, ghost-like wisps around her, though the sky remained eerily still, as if the storm clouds feared descending into the cursed hollow beneath the ridge. She did not pause to catch her breath. Every instinct demanded she move, faster and no farther, before the thing in the darkness fully awakened. Yet the shadows followed. At first they clung to the wall of the mountain, stretching unnaturally long across the snow. Then they began to detach, curling upward in slow, twisting tendrils that writhed like smoke seeking a vessel. Lunai's pulse hammered through her veins, but her stride did not break. She descended the narrow path cut into the side of the ridge, her feet slicing through layers of untouched snow. The moon, still absent behind thick, unmoving clouds, left the world a muted haze of grays and shifting silhouettes. The deeper she traveled, the stronger her senses sharpened. The forest was wrong. Too quiet, too aware. Every branch lagged with ice seemed to hold its own breath. Every frozen root beneath the snow hummed with the faintest vibration, as though listening for her movements. Even the wind avoided her path, distancing itself from the oppressive energy that followed closely behind. Her lungs burned, but she kept moving, because she knew the Hollow Wolves did not drag the Alpha King into that cavern for death. They dragged him there for transformation, and she had smelled the ritual energy. Older than the oldest Pagmas, more dangerous than death itself. The Alpha King's fate was unraveling by the hour, and she was the only one with the ability to see the trail they tried to bury beneath frost and shadow. The forest floor shifted beneath her feet. Snow gave way to hard-packed ice, and the trees grew taller, older. Their trunks blackened with age and coated in crystalline layers of frost. Their branches reached toward her like skeletal arms, forming an archway that stretched endlessly through the heart of the woods. Lunai stepped beneath them. A chill ran beneath her skin, sliding along her spine like a warning whispered directly into bone. The wind finally stirred, soft, trembling, carrying the faintest echo of something ancient. A heartbeat. Not hers, not human, not wolf. The ground throbbed with it in slow, heavy pulses, like the beating heart of the forest itself. Lunai stopped, lowering her stance as the air thickened. Snowflakes suspended themselves mid-fall. The cold deepened until her breath froze the moment it left her lips. She turned her head slowly. Behind her, the shadows that had followed her from the cavern condensed into a solid shape. Tall, lupine, skeletal. Not flesh, not spirit. Something caught in between. Its limbs twitched with unnatural flexibility, its ribs shifting like hands trying to break from inside its chest. Two pale, sunken eyes flickered open in the center of its voided face, locking onto her with silent hunger. It didn't breathe. It didn't growl. It simply watched. Lunai did not step back. Fear was a scent, and she refused to release it. Not here, not before this creature that moved like the nightmare-given form. Instead, she dropped into a low stance, fingers breathing the snow as if drawing strength from the earth beneath her. The wind circled her in a tight, restless spiral. Then the creature moved. It didn't run. It glided, swift, soundless, blindingly fast. A blur of shadows slicing through the frozen air. Lunai leapt aside, landing lightly on the snow-covered roots of an ancient pine. The creature tore past her, its claws carving a long gash into the ground. The snow evaporated where its limbs touched, leaving scorched traces that pulsed with dark energy. Lunai's heart pounded, but her mind remained steady. It was testing her, measuring her, hunting her for a reason. Because she wasn't prey, she was a key, and the Hollow Wolves needed her alive. But this creature, this century of shadows, obeyed different laws, laws older than theirs, laws tied to the cavern and its cursed sigil. The creature halted after its missed strike, body dissolving back into threads of smoke before reforming. Its eyes dimmed, then flared with greater intensity, locking onto her again. The forest bent under the weight of its presence. Even the ancient pines seemed to lean away. Lunai drew a long breath and focused her senses, reaching inward, past the panic, past the cold, toward the flicker of energy she had felt in the cavern. The vision of herself in the ritual circle returned, burning behind her eyes. Power, unfamiliar, untrained, but mine. She extended her fingers toward the ground. The snow trembled beneath her touch. A faint warmth pulsed through her palm, spreading outward in a slow ripple. The creature tensed, sensing the scent. The earth responded, a crack spiderweb through the frozen soil, glowing faintly with a color that did not belong to the natural world. The creature recoiled, not fearfully, but cautiously, as if recognizing something in her, something forbidden. Lunai stepped forward, eyes narrowing. The creature lowered its head. Then, with a shrill hiss that split the air like shattering glass, it dissolved into shredded wisps of shadow, sucked back into the trees as if fleeing the spark she had awakened. Silence returned, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of acknowledgement.